the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race.
It's a flying object, and we don't know what it is. I would hope somebody's checking it out. I'm glad the Pentagon is looking at this, because if it poses a threat, I want them on top of it.
Well, the craft generates its own gravitational field.
So you said they're flight guys?
The internet has become the command center for criminals and terrorists.
That's what we're discussing. Roger. Area 51. Alien deep under the ground.
This is so certain. You're here for a reason. You're listening to Troubled Minds Radio. Broadcasting live from a single bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. Somewhere in the desert sands outside Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth. And asking questions of you in earnest. Into the digital justice. Good evening and welcome to Troubled Minds Radio. Holy smokes, that is loud. Or the other one's quiet, I'm not sure. We're having less technical issues than last time, but hopefully we'll be able to get through it this time. So we're going to call this... What is this? The Anunnaki 1.0. Because the last one was a beta version. Alright, so this is Troubled Minds Radio. My name is Michael Strange. And I'm here with your co-host, Frank Pierce. And what's up? We want to say hello to all of you who might also have troubled minds. Super tech issues again because Windows updated and had a really huge update. I don't know if you guys got that. If you didn't, maybe it's like state spyware that got sent straight to my machine. Who the hell knows? But okay, so we should be able to get through this though, and everything seems to be okay. So the way this works is we're going to do the Anunnaki tonight. Of course, we talk about all the things. We talk about aliens, conspiracy, paranormal. We talk about, what else do we talk about? What don't we talk about? We talk about all the things we're not supposed to talk about. That's what it comes down to. So if you see it on the mainstream media, odds are we're not talking about it unless we're making fun of them, pretty much. And yeah, there we go. So, okay, yeah, caught me out of sorts. We're a little bit late. Sorry for being late. And here we go. We're going to go. So, what are we doing? Where are we at? Is this loud? Is it loud to you, Frank? Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me? I can hear you just fine.
Okay, hear me just fine. Perfect. Okay, so what we're going to do, and we have a couple guests. This is a special show, just like last time. So we have we're going to talk about Epstein real quick, and then yeah. But wait, I'm jumping the gun here. Let's introduce Frank. That voice you heard? Yeah, that's right. That's Frank Pierce. Ladies and gentlemen, your co-host, Frank Pierce.
Hello, my name is Frank Pierce, and we are back again for the Anunnaki episode. Now, we've worked out all the kinks. I've got a huge list of specific questions to ask these guys, our two experts that we're bringing on the show. Oh, the Anunnaki lore is deep. I spent the day going through it. I looked into all the details, so we got a good list of questions here, and we'll get to the bottom of this. You know, in my admittedly insane opinion, this is a potential threat. This is something we have to take seriously. If these guys come back, it could be the end of the world. I don't want to mine gold. I don't think you want to mine gold either. No, hell no.
So we got to take this seriously. Of course, that's just my opinion. We'll ask the two experts when they get on the show, and we'll talk to them. What else do we have? We have Epstein. We've got to talk about that. Some of the shenanigans going on Twitter, and you talk about the spyware and Windows Update. I wouldn't put it past them. I wouldn't put it past them to censor your computer and prevent you from typing in certain messages based on some of the things I've seen today. So we'll get into that as well. But yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. So we got the shout outs. God, I seem so loud. If I'm loud, let us know on the audio out there. I seem loud to myself, but if it's just to myself, then I'm okay with that. We got shout outs. We got first, it scrolled down too far, so I got first is Fred. We got Gabe. What's happening? Thanks for being here. We got Philip from Southern Oregon. We got Larry. We got Todd. Todd will be on the show with us shortly. Patrick from Salt Lake City. How you doing, buddy? Timothy here from Tinfoil Hat Timothy fame. We got Joshua. Thanks for coming. We got Emin, the spook, in Discord if you want to find out what he's all about. We got who else? We got Michael. Thanks for being here. We got Pawpaw. How you doing, buddy? Thanks for coming. Dale. What's up, Trouble Green Dogs? We got hell yeah. We got Tony. We got Larry. We got James. Check out that badge. What badge? What badge? I'm jealous. Where's the badge? Christopher, what's up? I just saw Jeffrey Epstein getting a taquito at 7:12 because 7-Eleven isn't really a thing anymore, I guess.
By the way, I'm echoing. So,
oh, are you?
I don't know.
You can hear me
twice. That's what the chat sounded. I am echoing to them.
You're echoing to them. Okay, we can fix that. I think we can fix that. Let's see. How do we fix that? All right, try it again.
Again, you'll have to keep us updated in the chat. Let us know if you fixed the problem or if I'm still echoing. And yeah, let us know.
There we go. Okay, so Frank's echoing. Tony, let's see. We got who else? We got Christopher. We got Thomas. Frank has echo. Thank you. Yeah, echo. Is it just Frank or everybody? Everybody. Am I echoing? You can't understand a thing. That's amazing. Okay, let's see. Crap. Let's just kill all that and see what happens. All right, maybe you can't hear Frank at all now. Okay. What's up, Christopher? This Soto. Stephanie, Frank is definitely in space. Okay. Wendy, what's up? Hi from Seattle. Timothy from the Twilight Zone. Darius. Okay. I'm just fine. Okay. Let's see. Frank is echoing. Darren, what's happening? And we got, who else do we got? Who else? Thanks for all the chat, guys. And, all right. So then we got, of course, Juan Carlos gets first on YouTube. And then we got Cedric. Thanks for being here. And, let's see. Who else? There we go. I think that gets us right. Okay. Just Frank. Okay. So, which is awesome because that means it's going to be just everybody, just the guests. Just everybody on Discord. Okay. All right. Frank, say something.
Yeah, let's have another test there, see if he's fixed it. Can you understand me, or am I in the depths of space?
Space, the final frontier. Yeah, we're just having problems, Darwin. We're trying to get this going. Okay, did anybody hear Frank? Frank just spoke. Did anybody hear Frank? Because I may have completely chopped him out here.
I think they fixed it.
That fixed it? How do you know that? Oh, are you checking? Okay, all right. You're listening to the thing. Okay, all right. That fixed it. Okay, so if you guys can hear Frank, then good. Sounds better. Okay. All right, so let's do this. Sorry about that, guys. Again, Windows update. Maybe it's some state spyware. I have no idea. Let me know if anybody out there had a big Windows update over the weekend. And if I'm the only one, that's sus. You get what I'm saying. Okay, so anyway, all right, much better. No echo. Thank you. All right, appreciate it, guys. Frank no longer echoing. Hell yeah. Okay. All right, so let's talk about Epstein real quick. So we're going to get into the Anunnaki, but I think it's important that this is what would you call this? This is probably one of those situations where it is the perfect storm, like all the articles are saying, for a conspiracy theory, right? Like we were predicting this a week ago, or weeks ago anyway. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, easily. This is a JFK level event. That's what it is. It's probably even more than that now with the media coverage and Twitter and discussion forums. This is a JFK level event. I think you have to agree with that. People from the left, people from the right, people who hate politics, everyone in the world except Todd, they're concerned about this. And so this is a big time conspiracy.
Yeah, definitely. And so not only that, this is, here we go. Timothy says, hey, we understand you guys have information that may lead to the Hillary Clinton arrest. No, we don't have that information. And stop spreading that damn rumor, please. We do not. But again, right, like this is exactly what this is all about. So the highest levels of power. This has been, go back to Pizzagate and these types of things. This is literally the conspiracy of all conspiracies, right? You can rope in the Catholic Church. Like, who knows what kind of actual, like how high the power structure is for this Epstein thing. And we knew, we knew it. Like I said, a blind man could see Epstein was going to end up dead. And so he does. Like, are you kidding me? He's on suicide watch and all this other stuff. Anyways, okay, let's get into the details of that, Frank. But this is ridiculous. This is, like, you're seriously telling me the most high-profile perp in the entire, probably, world at this point, right? That would be like Julian Assange ending up in jail and instantly ending up dead, like 2 days later, right? Like, oh, sure, he had all that time in the embassy to kill himself, right? But then suddenly he ends up in jail and he's dead? No. That, right? They got him and he's quiet and nothing of that sort. But Epstein, completely different story. Holy smokes, huh?
Yes. So let's just recap. He's on trial and all these people are coming forward. The documents were just released. A lot of juicy details in there, but he's on trial for these crimes. Now, he had names to name, probably. He had other deals to make he could have made. He could have split this thing wide open. Here's my secret notebooks. Here's all these video files. Here's all of this. Now that he's dead, that trial goes away, right? There's no one, you can't sue a dead man. You can't sue his estate. Well, maybe it could, but you know what? So all that trial, all that documentation, all of it goes away. So if we want that back in the public, what is it? It has to be like some kind of inquiry from Congress or something like that to get that information out there, because now that this civil, I don't know if it was civil or criminal, but now that the court case is gone, it's all over. It just ends. It stops. So someone has to step up and get this out here. Now, as the timeline goes, he pretended, or he tried to commit suicide. I believe it was about a month ago. And then come this weekend, they find him. He's off suicide watch in under 30 days. Again, doesn't really make sense. Then I was asking in the Discord here, Emin was kind enough to provide the info, but it says that he hanged himself. He hung himself. And again, that's what he tried to do 30 days ago. So why would they not put him in a cell with no attachments? Doesn't that make sense? You're in a cell, you've already tried to commit suicide. So make sure there's no hangers on the roof. Make sure there's no hooks you can tie into. That just makes perfect sense to me. Now, apparently he also had nothing in the cell that he could use to hang himself, no sheets, no pieces of wire, nothing like that. So how he ended up dying, it's kind of nebulous at this point. Now, what else? No cameras. That's a big thing too. No cameras on this guy's cell. What's that all about? Now, I've also heard rumors that the people who were supposed to check on him failed to do so. Apparently it was every 30 minutes and they just didn't do it overnight. So what's going on here? Any thoughts so far?
Yeah, so, okay. I did see something where they were discussing that they were understaffed, right? Like, this is the initial explanation, is that they had a guy that had worked like a fifth day of overtime and another guy that was on mandatory overtime, and right? So you're literally telling me that we have the highest profile perp in the entire world and we have an overtime issue at the facility. This is supposed to be one of the highest security facilities he's actually in. What the hell is going on here? This, and again, it's insulting for them to say, oh, well, for you guys to think something is strange or amiss here. You guys are, you got your imaginations are just running wild with this. Wait, what? What? Didn't we call this? We called this. We said he was going to end up dead. It was a matter of how, right? And how quickly. And here we go. Like, not even a week later after we were talking about this. This is unbelievable. Like you said, JFK level. This is big. It's unfortunate that these are the types of things that make us distrust the government. And hello, here we are again.
I was thinking about this today. Yeah, definitely disgusting. I was thinking about this today. We saw a picture of his body. Now, there have been people comparing his corpse to previous photos of him alive and saying that's not the real body. That's something else. That's a fake. All this. In this kind of day and age, even if we had a photograph of his body, it could be fake. We've covered deep fakes in the past. They could fake a dead body. They could do anything. So what do we need? We need like 5 doctors from 5 different states, each on a different political party, all coming together to view the corpse, and we need their testimonies to tell us he's dead. Because anything aside from that, just a picture, I don't buy it. I really don't buy it. So some speculation that he's still alive, he's still out there. I looked into this and I was wondering, has there been a case in the past where a high-profile witness or a high-profile person like this the FBI or the CIA or whatever has faked that person's death, and then miraculously later on they show up at their own trial. So they fake the death to keep the heat off him, prevent him from being assassinated, and then he shows up later still alive. Because that seems like a plausible thing. People are trying to kill him, let's pretend to kill him, and then let's wheel him out after, right? I couldn't find anything like that. I don't think they do that. Even in witness security, they don't fake that person's death. They just move them somewhere else and forget about them.
Yeah. Okay. So I pumped up the volume. If it's too loud, you guys can cry tears now out your ears, blood out your ears. But let me know how the volume is. I pumped it up. But okay. So yeah, this is it. We'll keep an eye on this. We have some documents here to look at. Let's look at these real quick, and then we'll get into the Anunnaki, Frank. What did you have here?
Yeah, let's open up this Twitter post. This is interesting. Again, this is kind of JFK level. So a lot of people got on Twitter and started this hashtag Clinton's body count. And the thing skyrocketed over the weekend. It was huge. And then Twitter, they removed the hashtag from the trending list so people couldn't really talk about it, couldn't congregate around it. And interestingly, they put in this Trump body count little hashtag instead. Now, this is a little breakdown of that, about how these things started. So you see this image here. Look at where the Clinton's body count hashtag started, all across the states, everywhere. Look at where the Trump body count hashtag started. What state is that?
That looks like California to me.
Yeah, and only California, right? So this is clearly fake. This is a bunch of people started this hashtag to kind of combat the narrative that the Clintons' body count got a +1 to the scorecard. This is the kind of stupid stuff Twitter's doing. But to remove that hashtag so people couldn't talk about this is ridiculous. They're trying to cover this up.
Of course, and and this is the thing, right? So you change the narrative, you get your own controversy, and this is it. So they're willing to take the heat for what? All of this is just insane to me. Okay, let's hurry up because we got other stuff to get to. We got these guys waiting. Okay, so what else do we got here?
Yeah, we can open up this Terrence K. Williams. It's another tweet. Trump actually retweeted this. So this guy's a comedian, and basically, we don't have to play it. You can check it out later. But to think the president of the United States retweeted this guy, who's essentially saying what we're saying now, give me a fucking break. There's no way this guy committed suicide. It was clearly the Clintons or clearly someone involved. Making jokes, being kind of funny, but being serious at the same time. And it's funny you mentioned earlier, someone was saying we have information that'll lead to the arrest of Hillary Clinton, right? And this guy addresses that. He says, I don't want no information. I don't care about, don't tell me any information. I don't want to end up dead too. So this is a great video. You should check it out if you haven't already seen it. But people are waking up. That's what I'm taking away from this. And to think that Trump retweeted this it's almost as bad as the lock her up thing, right?
Oh, is it? Is it as bad as that? I'm not sure about that. I think it's much worse, maybe. I don't know. Like we're kind of wading into the world of what's next. Like what big stupid thing is next? It's this is I don't know. We've gone off the rails. I think politically. I think you could argue spiritually. I think we've gone off the rails as an actual society. And these are the types of things we're looking at, right? The 10,000 people on Twitter and 8,000 people on Reddit they're driving the narratives, and with hashtags and robots, and yeah, it's disgusting. This is gross. I don't even know what to think. We'll keep an eye on this as it develops, because of course it will, because this just happened. This was yesterday, right? So unbelievable. But do check this out. This video is funny. Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Let's lay some predictions about what'll happen in the coming week. Personally, I think we won't get any new details. They'll kind of sweep it under the rug and they'll say, that's it. We won't learn how he died. We won't learn where he got the scarf or whatnot to hang himself. We won't get anything. They'll keep it, no transparency at all. That's my prediction. What about you? Do you think this is going to explode? Do you think there'll be a real investigation into it, or is it just going to get swept under the rug?
No, I think what they'll do is it'll be like kind of monkey shine shenanigans is what they'll do. So they'll try and make it look like they're going to continue with the investigation. They'll, spend $1 million on it and make a bunch of noise in the press until it slowly goes away, right? Until something happens that overshadows it, and they'll let it kind of leak and just, let the air out of it leak is what I mean, and just let it kind of deflate and disappear from memory. Like, that's what I think. Because if they do nothing, absolutely nothing, we have a serious problem here. Like a very, very big problem here. And I think they know it. So now it goes to damage control, and then they're going to try and make up, who knows, right? They're going to say, oh, look, we got his, they're already shifting focus to his, I guess he got a couple high-level, what'd you say, assistants that helped him procure his talent, let's say. And so this is where it's going to shift. So I think they might throw the book at one or two of these people, maybe leak some of this out to satisfy us, to satisfy the people that justice was served. But this is ridiculous. This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. That this could be allowed. Like, this guy should have been in like a Hannibal Lecter setup, like literally on the thing where they wheel him in dollies and he's chained up, 10 ways from Sunday, and they're feeding him a liquid diet, like this type of stuff. But why the hell aren't they? Like, we're preaching to the choir here, but
yeah, we can move on. Just as a final thought, someone is definitely to blame here. Whether someone came in a CIA black op and they killed the guy, there's a conspiracy there, or just the general ineptitude of the entire system to let this happen. The complete incompetence of these people involved. That's a good conspiracy too. So one way or the other, I think heads have to roll for this.
Yeah, definitely. And what though? So this is the conspiracy here. The original conspiracy is the highest level people protecting each other, right? And so here we go with, if they were involved at all, now the justice system pivots and then protects them again as well. I don't know. I think this is bigger than any of that stuff at this point. And I think JFK level is a good way to put it. Okay, so there we go. We will watch this and keep an eye, because this is just beginning, right? And funny, right? Like I said, a blind man could see this man would end up dead. How soon is the question? And here we are. It's unfortunate. Okay, so let's move to Anunnaki. Anything else on that, Frank, before we do that?
Yeah, no, let's move on. Let's talk about other high-level people as high as space. Here's a good transition for you. Let's talk about the Anunnaki coming to Earth, engineering humanity, stealing our gold, because that's what they did. So I'll move these guys in.
Whoa.
Hello, Todd.
Hi.
Hello, Kelly.
Yes.
Hey, what's up, guys?
He just pulled us in. We were like talking.
I know, we're in the middle of conversation over here.
That's cool.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna pump up your guys' volumes. All right, so this is Todd and Kelly. These are our resident Anunnaki experts. So why don't you go first, Todd? Just real quick, describe yourself and your interest in this, and you remember from the last time when we screwed it all up. Go ahead.
All right. Basically, most of you already know who I am. It's me. I'm into the Anunnaki. I've looked deep into it, and that's pretty much. I've seen UFOs all my life. Had out-of-body experiences. Me and Kelly were just talking about that, so I'm ready for the show.
Okay, ready to go. And so that's Todd, and you can find him on Discord as well if you want to follow up with this and pick his brain after the fact. That's where you find him. Go to troubleminds.org, Discord on the top right, click it, and you're in. All right, the next is we got Kelly here. What's up, Kelly? Go ahead and do the same.
Hey, how's it going, guys? You guys probably see me on chat all the time. Been following these guys for a while, but yeah, same thing with me and Todd. Had outer body experience, near death experience throughout my life. Seen UFOs, and I don't know. I've never seen them, but I've always, like, at night I could hear them, like when you're crawling around on my bed when I was younger. But that's a whole different story. We're here for the Anunnaki. I'm always into ancient books, all ancient writings, mystics, and magic. So just ready for tonight.
There we go. Okay. What's up? Shout out to Jennifer real quick. Hello from Vegas. Got to shout out the Vegas people. Okay, and then, all right, let's do this. Where do we start, Frank? Well, let's start this story from the top, and then we'll let these guys fill in the blanks.
Let's do some background first. So all of this comes from the Sumerian cuneiform tablets and some other sources as well. I think some Babylonian tablets, and specifically, they mention the Anunnaki as these gods, but it specifically started, and correct me if I'm wrong, with Christopher Sitchin, who said, "Oh, these guys are actually ancient astronauts," and then this whole story kind of unfolded. Is that right?
Yeah, Zecharia Sitchin, no. But you guys go ahead.
You want to get that, Todd, or shall I?
You can get it.
All right. Yeah, it pretty much, but it wasn't really Zacharias Sitchin. I mean, they've heard when they first pulled out all these tablets, that was in a city of Iraq. It was called Nineveh, and it was one of the capitals of the times back then. You know, where there be Mesopotamia um, or you know all the other Babylonia, Sumerian, Akkadian, all
Assyrian.
those, yeah, Syrian, all those. You know, it changed through all those times back then. But yeah, it Zachariah Sitchin after the first tablets they first found was the seven tablets of destiny, which or creation, seven tablets of creation, and that was actually in the city they found it. It was in the 7th century in the library of he was a king called Ashurbanipal, and he was a king of Nineveh. So, but that was they found those tablets, but at the time when they found them, they weren't like scattered about. You know what I mean? They weren't like thrown about, and they just finally put them back together. They found like thousands of these tablets, and each ones were like they were set in certain like stacks, and so they knew how they were. You know, it was talking about how the whole story went on some of these. That's how they found. Like I said, there was the seven tablets of creation.
Okay, which was
Sitchin, yes, he came out with his own books because he was actually Sitchin when at the time when he was doing it, he got it. He wasn't like he didn't go to school for all this. He was self taught, like we were talking about last time on the show. But he actually he started doing that, and he was doing it for 50 years by the time he passed away at 90 years old. So, but there's a lot of other people, like biblical people, like scholars. They want to say, they always trying to dispute his stuff, but everything that he's talked about and deciphered has been, it's known like worldwide, right? Now, I'm not talking about. I'm talking about like all the names of all these uh, deities, these gods. They're all the same. I mean, it's the same story, but it's just slight differences, or different names of gods.
And also, I just want to add that uh, Sitchin wasn't the first person to translate the tablets. They were translated in the 1800s, and it pretty much says almost exactly what Sitchin says.
Okay, so it goes back further. Yeah, that's a good point you brought up. Is that all these religions they are the same, even today. Different pardon me, different branches of the Christian religion. They're basically the same, except just people have different takes on them. And yeah, so I can easily see that going back and back and back further into time.
Yeah, because like even back then, like again, I was saying, Mesopotamia it covered three ages: the Neolithic, the Bronze, and the Iron Age, right? So, and then through then it brought forth the Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, Assyrian, and then soon after that, it fell to the Persian and Greek empires. So that's what I'm saying. Like if you look at all that, you know what I mean. So you could take all of that information and look at their deities, their gods, and how their laws were. But back then, Mesopotamia was known for the world's earliest writings, literatures, science, mathematics. Again, with I was trying to remember the type of mathematics last night. It was it's calculus. That was from the Babylonians. They first came up with laws, philosophies. So it's crazy to say that's to really look into that. That's why it really intrigues me, is because it's almost the first things of everything, and then after that, it's passed down through Egypt, all through the Persian, the Persian Empire, and what's crazy is like for example, some of the gods that are the same was like let's say let's see, I haven't looked at my notes here. The slight variations, yeah, it was let's see here. Um, Help me out here, Todd.
Uh, well, basically, all the pantheon of the Anunnaki goes through down to all the other deities from all the other countries like India, uh, the
Iran.
Greeks, Iran, the Greeks, the Romans. It's all the same pantheon of gods. with different names. Because all the stories are pretty much the same. There's always two factions fighting against each other, which is the Enlights and the Enkelites. Like Enlil and Enki's factions.
Yeah, so the names change, maybe some of the specifics change, but their roles, what they're known for, that really stays the same. Just like with the flood myth, for example, the cause of it may be different, but it all points back to some kind of flood happening at one time. So, there's a common denominator between all of this, is what you're saying, even with the names themselves and what these guys are doing specifically, and it's all kind of transmitted through history. It diverges in certain points, but if you go back far enough, this is the origin of all of it.
Right.
Yeah, you have the first writings of those are like just like the Bible. You know what I mean? That's been picked from like the Egyptian Book of the Dead. You know what I mean? That's where you find the that library there. You know, all that stuff. That it's crazy that people believe you like the craziness of the Bible. You know what I mean? Which I don't say all of it's fake, but like it's been changed so much to have it to where it's just a ruling piece. You know what I mean? Trying to like keep people in line. It was supposed to be at first. It was supposed to be just laws of humans of how they wanted us to live and not do stuff how they ended up when they're on their planets because they were warring type people anyway. So what's crazy is what I was, some of the stuff that I was looking at too is, through their DNA. So uh, science, when they talk about looking for aliens DNA, right, or human DNA. So what they're looking for, in my eyes, because if in these books and this lot in the book of Enki, they try to make the human species, right, and it took them about 10 attempts. But one of the ones that what's pretty crazy about it is the animal that they were using. They didn't That DNA, I'd say, is almost gone completely. That's what they're looking for. And they're not looking for an alien species or DNA because we're mostly them. Because they had to add more DNA of some of their DNA and the human or the species that they found here on this planet. But they just kept adding more DNA. Excuse me. And then after that, they started like Inky started mating with different females, and so by doing that, he's added more of his DNA. So if you really think about it, I mean, we're all Anunnaki, if or that type of species. Maybe not all of us, but you know what I mean. If there's interbreeding with other species that came to this planet, like people from Sirius or the Orion, the Orion Belt, or where most that's where some people say like in history that's where they don't believe in they don't think of that's Zecharia Stinchin's theory about the Nibiru planet. They have more evidence of saying that it is from either Orion or like the Dogon tribe from I can't remember that star Sirius star system or stuff like that. So that's why there's a lot of some disputes about it, but if you go that so I don't for myself I just kind of look at it as what I mean it's just another part of history, so I look at his, but most of his stuff he's saying is just already backed up by through history.
Okay, so let's back up. We got to tell this story like kind of in a like people that are listening have never heard this before. So let's do like a quick overview of like we don't have to do like go into every detail here, but just from where it started, Nibiru, Planet X, Mars, the Earth, why they came, like just something like maybe 5-10 minutes, and then we'll move on because a lot of the people here, may be familiar with this, but a lot of the people may not, and so we're kind of in the weeds already, and the story is kind of still dangling out there that people aren't really getting this. Follow me there, Frank? I think you got some of that.
Yeah, so why don't we start again? We kind of covered this on the last aborted attempt, but why don't we start with the Anunnaki themselves? So they came from Nibiru, but let's start. What did they look like? Some people say reptilians, and there are those carvings of these giant, tall creatures with reptilian-like faces, and some of the carvings show wings on the back, and most of them though show them as probably about 10 feet tall giants compared to us. So, is there any? What do they look like? What is the form they take? Any input on that?
Well, nobody alive now has actually seen one, so we can't say for sure. But in the picture that Mike just had up of the Anunnaki standing there with the wings. I'm pretty sure the wings were just a representation of them being able to fly because they had ships. But you can see that the faces, they kind of look like us, but they're kind of more slender and pointy. That's why a lot of people might have said that they look like snakes. Because Kelly was saying, he was reading something that they said they look like snakes or reptilian, but I don't think they were really reptilian. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to breed with us. So I'm thinking their faces were a little different than ours, but we were still had enough of their genes in us to be able to mate with us.
I would like to add on to some of that, but if you really, this is one thing that is kind of interesting is that this is one thing I was gonna talk about is when the first king, his name was Alalu, right? He died on he was the first king that died off the planet, off their home planet of Nibiru, and he died on Mars, right? They called it Lamu back then, but they said they carved his face out of a mountain, and that's what the face that you see that's on Mars. And what's interesting is that that whole area is called Cydonia, right? It's kind of like what Iraq was called way back at one time, but way back in history. And what's interesting, even more than that, they're both on the 33rd degree parallel.
Right.
Okay.
I saw that. The face on Mars is indeed a monument where they buried that guy. Right, he was exiled there, and then one of them died, and then they came to rescue him. That's kind of skipping ahead in the story, though. Let's go back to the Anunnaki. So again, I'll summarize the I guess the origin story. Nibiru was out there. It crashed into Tiamat. That formed the Earth. That formed the asteroid belt, and then the Anunnaki presumably evolved on Nibiru, and they developed. But then they started having problems. They started having atmospheric problems. So maybe you can talk about that a bit.
Yeah, so the story goes that they had atmospheric problems and they had to get gold as some sort of shielding that we talked about in the last episode there. And one of you guys can take that. Who wants that one?
Yeah. Go ahead, Todd.
I was just gonna say, basically, their planet is in a huge elliptical orbit. It's part of our solar system, but it goes way out in like an oval and then comes back in. And one time when it came back in, it passed through Mars and Jupiter, and it ripped part of their atmosphere off, which is why they needed gold to put in their atmosphere.
Okay, perfect. So then, there's a succession crisis on the planet, and I think you were talking to this in the last episode. I was reading into this today. They wrestle to prove who's in charge, and there was also something, a bit of a salacious detail in here. One of them bit off another guy's male member. Is that right?
Yeah, Alalu bit off Anu's private part because he was mad because he lost, and that's why he got kicked off the planet.
You know what's crazy about that part of the story, though, is that he died from that. So they already knew that he was going to die. So they were, they at first everybody wanted to kill him, like Inky, Anu's sons, which was Inky and Enlil. They wanted to have him die. They wanted to kill him, but they were saying that no, Inky said no, he's going to die anyway because his poison was inside of his belly. So that's what's the whole crazy part about it is that I don't know if they're poisonous or what, like their blood or something. But he ended up dying on Mars, so he was exiled there.
Yeah. Okay. So then they have this succession crisis. One of them goes to Earth, right? I guess he was kind of sent there. He goes through the asteroid belt, goes to Earth. What was that guy's name? And then they found gold, right? So maybe we can talk about the arrival of this guy on Earth.
Yeah. So when he left, okay, when he escaped, because he at first when he did that, he jumped into one of their spaceships, and then he was down and determined to find something to help the planet. So when he did, he flew to he ended up coming to Earth while he was scanning and doing scannings on all the planets. So after that, his name was Alalu. That's who we're talking about. That's his name, whose face is carved on the moon. And you know what's crazy? So that's what I'm saying. Or let me finish this part real quick. Is that if you want to know what they look like, that would probably be the best example you're going to see. Is because they said that he was wearing, they're gonna carve his face out, and he was wearing a eagle's helmet, and his face was uncovered. So that's one question that you could right there, Frank, if you want to know. And what's kind of interesting too, they have also had. I didn't send those pictures to Mike earlier, but there, if you could, you could even pull it up real quick. Is the crop circle with the it's made out of a face? That face and Alalu's faces looks very similar. But anyway, yeah, his name was Alalu, and he came to Earth and he found gold, but he crash landed and he sent a message back to Nibiru saying, "Hey, we found gold." So they sent Inky. Inky was sent to go find out what was going on. Him and another Anunnaki. And once they got there, they splashed down, and then that's how Inky he was Lord of the Waters. I guess he knows the power of water and all the science behind it and stuff too, because he was a scientist as well. So when he got to Earth, that's when they started mining for gold. Well, they started setting up to mine for gold.
Now, here's a question I had about this: is yeah, so the original guy shows up, and then he sends the message back, and then more show up, and they talk about starting to build settlements, and you're the lord of the plants, you're the lord of building, you're the lord of doing this and that, and they start to build all these settlements and cities. Do we know how many people made the transit? Like, do we have a rough estimate of numbers, or just the names of the main people in charge?
Yeah. There was. I just actually read this when I was breezing through it, getting ready for the show. It was 400 Anunnaki and 300 Agigi. The 300 Agigi was sent to Mars to do a way station there. That's where they lived. And at the time, Mars had an atmosphere, had lakes, waters, oceans, all this, all that. But yeah, there was so there. The total number was about when they first started. It was getting ready, doing all the mining was about 700 of them.
Okay, so yeah, that's another question I had. And it's kind of skipping ahead a bit, but they talk about building a network of way stations to help transport this gold. So we know about the one they put on Mars, and they had I guess, their factory, their manufacturing on Earth. Did they ever talk specifically about other way stations? There's a way station on Pluto, or something like this.
Todd, you want that one?
I actually don't know too much about that one.
Yeah, they had way stations. They had way stations on Mars and all the planets. Or actually, they had a couple of them on. Depends on the planet's gravities is what they're doing. Because how they got the gold, it was what they did is they had it in chunks, right? And they had rockets. So and that's what's crazy. People think, well, rockets wasn't, that's not really a lot of technology. But if you think about it, at the time when they came here, that's almost the beginning of time, or the beginning of this our galaxy, or our planetary system that we have. But so, and they had rockets. Now what we got is barely as what we got. What we call our technology is rocket. But back then, they had different ships. So what they did is they had rockets to launch it to Mars, and then from Mars has a less atmosphere or gravity, and they could be able to launch their spaceships. They actually broke it down into a fine powder, and then they would launch it from one way station all the way back until they got to their home planet when it was out, and then out. Let's say it was in the long elliptical, and one of them. So it was what's crazy about it. They named each planet too, and the one I really kind of got me, the Pluto. They called Pluto late Gaga is what the name of it.
Okay, so they get to Earth and they're getting gold to take it back, right? That's the entire point here. So they have the way stations on the different planets that get to Earth. They're trying to collect the gold with the Igigi, which are the servant class, and then they're going to take it back and save Nibiru, right? That's the entire story arc, pretty much.
Yes.
Okay. And then so of course there's trials and tribulations from here to there. There's issues. There's like Frank said, the ascendancy issues of who rules what, and a lot of that. So it is deep, and we could go into a bunch of that. But I think once you start telling that story, you kind of do a little bit of a disservice. You guys want to check it out? Where do they go to read this stuff? Just if anybody else wants to really dig deep, where did you guys find this?
I found most of mine on YouTube videos of researchers, and then I found books, and I dig deeper, and I read a whole bunch of PDFs about it, and I went to that one site that I talked about last time, the UCLA site, and read some of the tablets for myself.
Yeah, I found them on, you can order the book through anywhere online, but Zecharia Sitchin was what, I was first just, doing research and who was doing the research of the research I wanted to research. So Zecharia Sitchin was one of them, and then also, all the other astronaut theorists that's out there. Yeah, so and you can find that anywhere. And also on YouTube, if you don't really done how I first started, getting into it too. Josh Reeves, he does a lot of readings of a lot of ancient books. He does this one, and then he's done the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, a lot of Zecharia Sitchin books, other authors as well. I mean, he's got his own podcast, and he does a lot of the ancient readings. And so what I did was I wanted to even delve in deeper, start doing my own notes. So what I bought the book and then listened to it on YouTube.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so now anything that we missed, Frank, about the story arc to fill people in? It's really dense and it's hard to make it quick, but at least so that they kind of get a feel of where we're headed with this.
Yeah, so they landed on Earth. They were trying to extract the gold from the water in the swamp, tried to extract it from the water in the oceans. They couldn't get enough though, so they had to move to Africa, right? And that's where they set up their first place. I believe they called it Baalbek, right? That's their first city in Africa where they started really finding huge quantities of gold in the earth. Is that correct?
After
Yes.
the flood is when they found the huge quantities.
Yeah, after the flood, but they started digging, and actually their when Nibiru came around and their father showed up on the planet, and they were asking, he just told them, well, what do you need? So they brought supplies down, from planet to planet, where Enki started building machines. He had machines were called hold on, let me I got a bookmark. Let's see. Yeah, he had some crazy machines that would what it would do would it would dig tunnels underground, and then on top he had one that's just called like the Smasher, and the 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 tunnel maker, and all kinds of stuff. So, but they needed the Anunnaki to, when it got down to like digging the nuggets out or like the veins, that's had to be the hard handwork. So, yeah.
Okay, now before we get to creating humans, because that's what they eventually do, let's talk about. There was something about them getting sick. So when they came to Earth, they'd suffer some kind of ailment or they'd get sick, and one of the other Anunnaki showed up. I forget her name, with seeds to make an elixir to prevent this sickness. Now, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, her name was that's the sister of both Enlil and Enki. Her name is Aninma. Yeah, she brought actually the plant. She said she was known as a lady. Her powers were like it's called Sakor, and it was I guess it would be like I would say part magic and part like being a nurse or a doctor or something, because she would make she brought the plant, which I believe that plant could be cannabis, because it cures all diseases, well, a lot of diseases happening, or even makes their mood happier. And that's what one thing that it said the elixir did. It changed their mood. It kind of helped them out. And if you see, like, what's weird is even in Egypt, you'll see the one or it looks like the marijuana plant above it's etched into the wall, and it looks like I don't know. It's kind of what it looks like. It looks like those cartoonish bubbles, right? And it looks like a marijuana leaf above her head. Yeah, her name was Enigma. She was a sister. They're half sisters. All three of them are all half brother and half sister. And what's crazy is Enki is the oldest, but he was born of a concubine. And Enlil is the second oldest, which is another boy, and he was born of the king and queen. So he's got rights to everything. And then the sister Ninma, she's born of They're all born to this. They got the same father but different mother.
Okay, no, so that sickness, do we ever know what it was? And also, there was something about Anunnaki who were born on Earth had a lower lifespan than Anunnaki who were born on Nibiru. So, not the humans, but the Anunnaki themselves. When they were born on Earth, they died quicker than on Nibiru. Now, do we know what that sickness was, or do we know anything about that?
It wasn't a sickness. It was from the Earth's rotation. It was different from their planet, so they would age faster.
Okay, so somehow the rotation of the Earth caused them to age quicker.
Right, because their planet was bigger, so the rotation is slower, so they wouldn't age as fast.
Yeah, the sickness you're talking about, Frank, is they claimed that they had more. The word they use is more like they were just upset. It's just real toiling in the minds of all the hard work that needs to be done in there. So the plant that she made was from the elixir. Like I said, it just like it says it just helped change their mood. It helped like sicknesses they got, and it could be just from Todd was saying is one of the main things was because they started aging faster. Because when their dad came down a couple times throughout the book, he was tripping out because his sons and daughters were looking way older than what they were.
Okay, I got a good question here from chat. What's up? Ingrid says, "Excuse my ignorance. Why do aliens make themselves so mysterious to us? So if they're out there, how come we don't have any definitive proof? What do you think? Take that one, Frank."
Well, people like me, right? People like me would see the aliens and maybe overreact to them. I don't know. That could be it. Or maybe they want to leave us alone to develop. Maybe they are, altruistic in that way. I'm not sure. How can you ever really know? We attribute human thoughts and emotions to aliens, but aliens don't have human thoughts and emotions. They have alien thoughts and emotions. So you can't even get into the mind of the people around you most of the time. How the heck would you ever understand what an alien would do?
Well, we've talked about in the past. So if you saw one of your first instincts would be to shoot the thing, right? I think that's probably a good reason for them to stay away from us as a whole, if they're here observing, Okay. Philip says Frank would kill them. Hey, see, exactly. That's all.
Yes.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think too, because people say there's no definitive proof. I'm like, what other proof that you need? I mean, we got videotapes since videotapes started happening, or even like phones now. I mean, even from that before that. I mean, look at some of the monuments that have been built around the world, and we still can't even. And I don't care what people say, like how many so many years that they said that they built the pyramid. There's no way that human hands just did that by themselves. And some of the stuff like in Punapunku, Machu Picchu, worldwide, there's some stuff we can't even do with some of these stones that are like the only thing harder than that would be diamonds. You know what I mean? The way they built stuff, like the keystone, like that's worldwide too. There's only one or two things that could happen with that. Is either the same builders or the same builders taught the people how to build the same way.
And what's that mountain? Where's that mountain where it looks like the top's been sliced off? That's
Oh,
like the
that's in Peru as well.
right. That's the same technology that they used to create the face on Mars.
That would be the
Okay.
one with the hieroglyphs, right? That you can only see from the sky. What are they called? The Nazca lines, right?
Right, but there's a mountain where the top's completely sliced off and it's completely flat.
And it's got like landing strips that looks like on it.
Right.
Okay, I know what you're talking about. Okay, sorry, Frank, go ahead.
Yeah, let's get back to the story. So, if I'm understanding correctly, these these marijuana shortages led to the bad working quality, and that led to the revolt eventually of these guys that had to do the hard work in the mines. So they needed an alternative. They needed something else to get these guys going, because I think they didn't believe in slavery, right? So they never forced these other Anunnaki to mine, but I think they even let them go back home when they were sick of it. But they needed to create some other kind of worker. Maybe you can talk about that a bit.
Right. Well, that's true, and it's also because they got fed up of doing the work for so many years without having women or anything like that. So they were just fed up with just working and not getting anything in return.
How dare they?
Yeah, they actually, that's actually in Tablet 6, and that's when they were talking about making humans. And it took them like 10 times before they could realize what was going on. 'Cause they were mixing the two DNA inside of an Anunnaki dish. It was like made of crystals. And so after a while, they couldn't do it. Uh, and they thought, well, if they're from the planet or a key, you know, from Earth, that let's make it out of the clay bowl, the mixture that we mix the DNA together inside of a bowl. And now that we're bringing that up, Mike, I don't know if you could. I sent you a couple things about that. It was called the. My theory on that, it could be. I'm not saying it is, but it could be this bowl that they found in Bolivia. It's called the Magna Fuente bowl or the Fuente Magna bowl. And on the side of that is what's crazy. They found it in the high plains of Bolivia by Lake Titicaca, and it inside of it looks like Sumerian cuneiform, like the early writings of that style of in Sumerian.
Okay, I got it up on the screen here. I'm linking it if you guys want to check it out. So you can see the bowl there on the left side, but then on the inside there's that inscription. It seems to be some sort of, would that be like an Igigi or Anunnaki? Who's that inside the bowl?
I don't know what. It's kind of some kind of weird animal or something like where it comes together that you're talking about. Yeah, I don't. I couldn't say what it is.
Okay, so some sort of humanoid figure. It's definitely the center point of this bowl on the inside of the engravings here, and pretty good stuff. Lake Titicaca, and this is where it was found, and another one of those hotspots, right, where they have a lot of ancient alien type activity they talk about. Sorry, Frank, you don't have this link. I'm gonna drop it for you real quick. But anything else about this, Kelly, before we move on?
Actually, me and Todd were talking about the same thing, which is there was another link that I found talking about is after the deluge, is that's where uh, the areas that they landed when they're talking about the flood. The first time they were talking about was in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and but the flood situation is they said there was a high plains of Peru, right, in the Andes. And when they got there, what's crazy about it is in that area by Lake Titicaca, they have another building, or not a building, but it's like a wall. And they said it was the beginning of mankind again. And what's crazy is, I mean, that's talked about on ancient astronaut theory too. Is about there's have a ton of faces along the walls, right? And each one is like shaped different. One looks European, one looks like it's from Asia, one looks like it's from South America, one's got like a beard on it. But the other one, and that was strange about it, it looks like a gray alien, and even the stone is like an off-white color looking.
Okay, let's go back to creating humans, because I was reading about this just earlier. So they captured these primitive creatures from Africa, and they brought them to this house of life, and that's where they kind of proposed to do a hybridization between the Anunnaki and the human, and these primitive creatures, to create what would eventually be humans. And as you were saying, the first couple attempts, like I think I read the first attempt, the thing could only like grunt and make a few noises, and the second attempt it was like couldn't hear or something like that. And yeah, they failed repeatedly until they did two things. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. There was something about including clay in the process, including some kind of clay. Maybe that was the dish you're mentioning. And also, they had to carry the child in an Anunnaki womb. Is that correct? Not in the primitive creature womb, but the Anunnaki womb, in order for it to have intelligence.
Todd?
I'm sorry, I was reading the comments. I didn't hear it. Question. What did you ask, Frank?
Yeah, I'll take this one. Yeah, and actually, yeah, that was it's mentioned in Tablet 7, and that's when they made the humans, right? So it was a different attempts, and then when they finally did it, who helped do it it was called the Abzu, I believe, and it was Inky and his son Nigajita, and his sister, which was Ninma, gave birth because they had to put the egg. It couldn't be in a female yet, a human female, because there was no. They were just trying to make a human, like a something that could work her, right. That could be more of what the animal that they found. And the sister Ninma actually gave birth to a man, and they named him his name was Adamu. And so just Adam with a U on the back end of it. And then Inky's wife, which is Ninki, she gave birth to a female, and her name was Tiamat. That they named her after that planet. So it was Adamu and Tiamat, and that's where I believe that you could. That's what you're talking about, the clay, and that clay bowl would and that's what I believe. That's my theory, is that it could be. I'm not saying it. Well, it leans more to that it could be them, that Fuente Magnum bowl.
Okay, now there was a couple of weird details. The first, I guess, new species, they had red skin, they said, and they also had a foreskin, which the Anunnaki didn't. Any thoughts on that? That was kind of a weird detail. The Anunnaki didn't have a foreskin apparently, but these created humans did have one.
No, I think you got that backwards. The Anunnaki had foreskin. So, and that's another thing. That's how they wanted to mark us humans, is that they cut the foreskin off. That's why, like in a lot of, like with Judaism too. They cut the foreskin off their bishop, or whatever they want to call him, and then he sucks the blood out. And that's kind of a weird little tradition that they have, but that's what they do. But yeah, they want to. That's how they were marking, because we look so much alike like them. They would have to mark us for a while, and the one way that they did do it is they would make us walk around naked. So that's how they could know that we were a human. At first and then when wearing clothes, that's when they had another way they would had to mark us, was they would cut off their foreskin.
Okay, and that leads to the next point. Apparently, this new humanity, it didn't really have good fertility. I think I read, and so they needed to take something from one of the ribs of the Anunnaki and put it into these new humans so they could breed. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. They couldn't procreate, so they had to add a. See, and this is where I'm getting to, where I was talking about earlier, is that we're not even part. We're not even the human or the creature that they found back then. We're just like them, or we are them. So yeah, they had to add that more DNA to it, and then after that they could procreate. And then I was reading that too, is his name was Adapa. So Adapa, and no, I'm sorry, that's another part of the story I was gonna get to. But yeah, they had to. So once they started procreate, then they had, they started making, the humans were mating, and at the same time Anunnakis were being born, that were on Earth instead of Nibiru, and that's actually in Tablet 7.
There's also proof that on our double helix, there's caps put on to make us to shorten our lifespans.
Mm-hmm. That is correct. Yeah.
Because when the Anunnaki first were breeding with humans, you can even read it in the Bible that humans were living to 800 to 1,000 years until they put the cap on our DNA. That's why our lives got shortened.
Yeah, that leads me to my next question. There was something about these humans had a slow maturity rate, and then they did something so we would breed quicker and we would develop faster, so we could mine sooner. Is that right? There was something about the maturity rates were different until they messed about with it.
Well, it's like Kelly was saying, the humans that they first created couldn't breed, so they had to keep re-engineering until they were able to breed. Men and women were able to breed with each other and have kids, and that's how our population started growing and growing and growing. And that's why Enlil got tired of us, because he said he could hear the humans out in the streets fucking doing whatever at night, and he got tired of it, so he wanted to kill us.
Yeah, so then we move on to the next part of the story, and there was this whole rebellion thing that happened, or a little fight, a spat between them. Maybe you can kind of talk. We were there, we were mining the gold, everything was going okay. Then what happened?
Well, the rise up wasn't the humans. That was the Agigi.
Yeah. So the Igigi, we replaced them as the miners, but I thought Enlil, he raped someone, they had a kid, and then he found some weapons and he started kind of a rebellion, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Am I incorrect?
that was later in his story, but that's all. That was Enlil. I don't know if it was an Anunnaki girl or a human girl that he raped, but yeah. But then they banished him, and somebody that was with Alalu on Mars, or no, wait, Enki hid the weapons on Earth, I think, and somebody who was with Enki when he hid the weapons, I think it was one of his sons, told Enlil where the weapons of destruction were, and that's the that goes into the poison wind story later on.
Okay, so they've made the humans who are mining, and then eventually they have this poison wind and this weapons. But is there anything notable that happens in between those two time periods?
Not between the humans and the Anunnaki. That was infighting between the Anunnaki clans, Enlil's clan and Enki's clan, because that's when Marduk started rising up, who's Enki's son.
Yeah, that's actually the what happened was there was a couple uprisings between the Gigi and the Anunnaki, or well, actually, which is in Lil, because in Lil was the he was the his half of ruling was he was like the ruling of like all laws and everything that was on the planet. So they rose up against in Lil, and they actually stole these things called the tablets of destiny. And whoever owns the tablets of destiny, I guess somehow becomes almost indestructible. They will, some. So they had aerial battles, and Enki or Enlil, I think it was Enki, had to make a special weapon to take. What's it? His name was Anu, and he was the first leaders of the 300 Agigi that was on Mars. And then when the Agigi came down for well, after the uprising, he was taken down, he was killed, and then they gave the command to Marduk, which is Enki's firstborn son. And when Marduk, he had an uprising too. They were going against Enlil again, and there was some wars going on with that. And then later on, that's when that rape happened, and then Marduk was on the run. They locked him in the pyramid. I don't know if I'm going too far. Let me know, but they locked him in the pyramid, and the only way to get him out was the guy who built the pyramid, which was Enki's other son, which is Nigazida.
Okay, yeah.
It's
Let's
also Thoth.
Yes.
yeah. So let's get the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that he's been known Nigazida. He's in like a master builder. That's where he's in like the Atlantean. His name is known as Toth, but his skills was um like chem, right? The chem is actually
Egypt.
yeah, but what are they? They're alchemists. All right, so his name he was through alchemy and through like science, and again through like some kind of a magic. He learned to stay alive longer. He learned to not die, or if he did die, he reincarnated. He was known as Thrice Magistus, as Toth. Niggas. He was also the feather serpent down in South America.
Quetzalcoatl.
Yeah, Quetzalcoatl.
Okay, if you guys are confused about what's going on here, I've put up and I've linked in the chat the Anunnaki family tree, so you can kind of if you want to pull up on this link and then maybe follow along, because some of these names come out of left field sometimes and you're not exactly sure.
I'm sorry,
so here
Mike, but that's how it is too. I mean, like to really kind of that's why I implore the other listeners to go ahead and get that book, and just if you want to start. If you want to just read a book, it's a good read, or just you want to start doing your own research. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. The names that we're trying to give, that's what we're trying to say is like who his sons are, and because that's the problem we're at now is like it's been through generations of fighting and war between each other.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I just wanted to throw it up there in case anybody wanted to dig a little further. Perfect. Good stuff.
Yeah, to address that point further, there's crazy details like the biting off of the male genitalia and all sorts of weird stuff you wouldn't expect to see in here. Yeah, it's a great story, and I had fun looking through it today. To address the point you made earlier, that was something I noticed. Much like today, we all have our specializations. You're a computer programmer, you're a farmer, you're a doctor. And it seemed like they had that back then too. They all had their unique specializations. I found that pretty interesting. How it's the same thing as we have today.
That's because they're the ones that gave us civilization.
Yeah, the civilization it was called MEs, right? And that was all created by Enki. And it was crazy too, like if going to just like similarities through some of the stuff that they had, right? So you see everything that's like the guy, the description of the guy. He looks like he's got an eagle head on, right? And he's got a thing, and it looks like he's wearing a watch, and he's carrying a basket. Now, my theory on that is that everybody's wondering what basket that he's holding. To me, if that's that's also it's a Nagigi or not a Gigi, but an Anunnaki god. What it to me is that's a showing or a form of saying that he was a kingship or he owned an ME that was given from Enki so he could create his own civilization. See, we're all clones if you really think about it. So we're all when Enki gave out the MEs, which is a form of civilization, right? They gave you the laws. That's where all the laws and all the like the lawgivers and all the stories of all that, like Jesus, or even like before him, Joseph, or even before him, you know what I mean? All the way it goes back to Mesopotamia, Egypt, all that, right? It's all the same stories, the same story as what this Jesus did, you know what I mean, did and what he was called. But if you look at it too, it's just going back to that same story. It's just the MEs, right? So that was a form of saying, hey, there's different ruling because each part of the earth was given to different parts of their Enlil and Enki's family, and his sister as well. His sister took the Hindus Valley. That's where she ruled at. And that's what another thing I kind of wanted to get into a little bit later, a little into the book is who owned what areas, and then they never left. And I believe that the whole there's sections like they were given to, right, like I was saying, but there's one place that was strictly for Anunnaki. It's forbidden for humans to go, and I believe that could be the Antarctic. That'd be the perfect place to hide if you're going to be down there.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, maybe we can talk about that a bit. Is the start of human civilization. So they kind of bred us, they created us as this kind of worker slave caste race, and then they gave us technology. They gave us civilization. They congregated us in certain cities, and they divvied it up between them all. So maybe we can talk about kind of the Anunnaki starting civilization, human civilization.
Okay, well, it started out with the Anunnaki who bred with humans. They would their children, which would later become demigods, were the first kings. Or they started out actually as a priest class, and the priest class would take orders directly from the Anunnaki and give them to the people. So they would basically be the ones. They'd be the president, and the Anunnaki would be the people behind the president, running them and telling them what to do. And basically, it just trickled down from there. And then later on, when there was no more demigods or less demigods, they would do give priest class. They turned it into kingship, and that went to normal humans who started becoming kings and pharaohs in the different places that they were set up.
So they were the puppet masters behind the scenes, is what you're saying. In all these
Exactly.
different cities, they would raise up a human, tell him to, or a hybrid, and tell them to rule. But they were always behind the scenes, kind of pulling the strings.
Exactly.
Kind of
Okay,
like
now
what's going on today.
exactly. Here's a question for you, and I don't okay, they worship them as gods back then, right? So they worship these Anunnaki as kind of their gods. Is that correct? That's how the humans viewed the Anunnaki.
Correct.
Right.
So if they came back today, and maybe this is a personal question because you guys believe in it, do you think we or you or anyone in particular would return to that form of government? Would you worship them? And also, do you think they would expect us to worship them?
They could expect us whatever they want. I wouldn't worship anybody. That's just my opinion because I don't believe in religion at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't what you call worship them. I don't worship anything. I don't bow down to nothing. But the thing about it is if they do come, and you imagine what they had back then to what they probably got now through technology, because if Inky went back, he was the master builder of all that. He was the mastermind. Let's say Inky and his brother went back, and then the kids stayed here. Some of them stayed here and still are ruling. So if you think about what they had now, I mean, there's no. What are we gonna do about it? That's the thing about it.
And we worship them with hot lead should they return. But then you mentioned something. They might already still be here.
I'm with you, Frank. I don't bow down to nobody, but that'd be a hard fight.
Yeah. Again, though, it seems a bit weird. They seem to have all this advanced technology, but they, for example, had a hard time mining asteroids. They had a hard time getting through the asteroid belt. They weren't omniscient. They weren't omnipotent. They couldn't control everything. They still had their faults and weaknesses potentially to exploit.
You know what's crazy about that whole right there? Talk about that. Because when they first trying to get through the asteroid belt, they were using like those bombs. You know, they call them the weapons of terror, and all they did was made more of a mess, which it would. You know what I mean? It would just make the asteroid belt even more asteroids.
More chaotic.
So what was crazy to me, and it's almost like, well, I can't believe we're not even thinking about it. But Inky made, and these are in 1,000-year-old tablets, right? Inky made a weapon type thing, and he used water just to push the asteroids out of the way instead of instead of blowing them up and making smaller asteroids and make it worse for you. That's what's crazy about it. It makes sense almost.
Yeah, it does. And I think that was their fuel too. That's why they had to stop on Mars. Is that correct? To get water to make their fuel.
Doesn't really say. Well, it does say how their fuel is they had like, and that's like Todd was saying, everything they powered was through a crystal. Everything that they had to make run, because it would heat up. It said it would make a heat. That's why, and back then you would hear sometimes you get when their gods would take off, they had fire and brimstone and loud noises, the thunder, and brighter than three stars, because these things are coming down, and who knows what type of stuff. And I think it was some kind of a crystal that powered all their weapons. They could even made this as emitter to bring back people alive. She went over his body, and then went over Alalu's, or not Alalu's, but Anzu's body when he was on Mars, and to bring him back. 600 times she had to go around his head, and then with this weird emitter, and then they gave him the food of life and the life of water. So it's like a plant. That's one of the things of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Not to go back to that, but the Epic of Gilgamesh is what he was trying to find. He was trying to find the plant of life, which actually would give him immortality, but he never found it. Oh, he did, but it was taken from him by a snake.
Yeah, that's something else I found crazy is there's a lot of parallels. So we had Eden, that was the city. I think this is correct that they started when they first landed. We've got this Adam character and an Eve character. We've even got Cain and Abel, right? Wasn't there a story in there where they were raising sheep and trying to compete for their interest, and then they ended up killing each other? Or one of them?
Yeah, they were fighting over water rights. The two brothers, and Cain killed Abel.
Right, and those were Adapa's sons.
Yeah, Adapa is the first human.
Yeah, so
I'm sorry. Adapa was Enki's son with the human.
Oh, that's right. Inky had he mated with two females he seen along a river, and each one of them, it was Adapa and Titi, and those two actually mated together.
Right.
Yeah, so it amazes me how many parallels there are with modern religious mythologies going back all the way to these tablets. It's all the same, isn't it? Names change a little bit.
It's because it's all taken from the Sumerian tablets.
Not only that, let me squeeze in shoehorn a parallel here. So not only that, also modern fiction. Has anybody ever read? I think I mentioned this the very first time we did the Anunnaki show, but by L. Ron Hubbard. Don't hate me, but he wrote Battlefield Earth, and so like just to like smash like a 800-word novel into like a couple minutes, like aliens came from a distant planet to farm Earth for gold because they needed it for some sort of catastrophe that was happening back on their planet. And these aliens came and they started training people how to speak their language, and they were farming the gold for them. Crazy, like it's much longer and much more in depth, but very very similar in the skeletal structure. And it kind of makes me wonder if he ripped it off, huh?
And they were giants.
Yeah, and they were giants. Yeah, have you read that one? You know what I'm talking about?
I've seen the movie.
No, it's terrible. The movie was atrocious. It was atrocious. But yeah, no. If you're interested, so I wonder if you go back and read that, kind of with the eye on the Anunnaki, how much he actually ripped off from that, because L. Ron Hubbard, right? Wink, wink. Scientology. But just curious that so there's the parallel, right? So not just that, there's tons of fiction that this kind of has not just biblical wise, but actually inspired all kinds of science fiction too. Pretty crazy stuff.
Also,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the movie Stargate was based on Marduk, Enki's son.
Okay, so there's a ton of this, right? Just kind of spawn out in the pop culture all over the place, just bits and pieces of it. And
Just
that's
like
I think
Star
that's
Wars.
the thing, right? Oh, go ahead. Star Wars too.
Yeah, all that stuff. I mean, they even talk about in this book too. They talk about some weird stuff too. Kind of sounds like or actually in the Emerald Tablets at the top, it's almost like the exact same stuff of like almost science fiction. You know what I mean? Like Star Wars, like the Force. You know what I mean? And actually, the human body. I think maybe that's why a lot of people or a lot of different species are interested in us, because we are somewhat of a mixed breed, but yet we were made in we got all that Anunnaki blood in us, or maybe even some other type species too. So they're interested is that why is it that we can mix? Maybe we're the only type species that can mix different bloodlines. You know what I mean? And they can still use our blood.
That's a neat thought. That's actually brings up a question. Did these tablets or did Sitchins ever talk about different alien species? So we have the Anunnaki, we have the hybrids that they've created us, but is there any mention of other intelligences, other types of beings out there somewhere?
Yes. And actually, this is what's even crazy about it is that he was an emissary. In this book later on, when they were talking about killing all the humans, there was an emissary that came. They said he was from his and knew from his dad from Anunnaki or from the Nibiru,
Galzu
and
or something.
his name was Galzu, and he was said he was an emissary from his dad, and they told both of Inky and Lil. Well, actually told Inky in his dream. He said he had a dream and he came with him with a tablet of lapis lazuli, and he gave him the blueprints of building he told him that the humans have to live. That is, the will of their dad, Anu. And in that tablet, Inky thought it was a dream, right? So he woke up later on, and then he went to get out of bed, and he kicked this tablet over. And so that's where you have the story of Moses or Noah, but in the tablets, his name was Zisudra, and he tells him, "Hey, read Hut," and that's actually part of that's where they're saying some of the stuff that he did use. Part of that it was the Enuma Elish, which is those tablets, the 7 tablets of creation, and that's when that is parts in there as well. So but there was many floods back then. Go ahead, Todd.
I was just going to say the reason that Enki called Sisudra the Reed Hut is because he made a pact with Enlil that he wouldn't help the humans directly. So he had to talk to the wall and pretended like he was talking to the wall so he wouldn't break his oath.
Okay, that's a good segue back to the main story. So we've got civilization, we've got all these humans running around causing a ruckus. What happens? Where does it go wrong? Enlil gets angry that we're having too good of a time. So what happens? How does the story go from there?
Okay, well, the flood was actually a natural disaster that they knew was coming because Nibiru was coming close to Earth again, and it was going to cause catastrophe. And he knew that it would kill the humans. So, Enlil wanted to let all the humans die, and that's when the emissary came and told Enki to have his son build the submersible, which is Noah's Ark, but it wasn't really a boat. It was a submersible because he told him to seal it and make sure it would rock back and forth and flip over. And they told him to take all the seeds. He told Enki to take all the seeds of all living beings and creatures and plants and uh, put it in a test tube so they could start over again later.
Okay, so we had the flood and they preserved us that way. Then there was the poison wind. Was there any other like attacks or mass cataclysm type things? There was the poison wind with the weapons. What else? What were they doing to get rid of us?
Well, the poison wind wasn't to get rid of us. That was them fighting each other.
Another thing
Oh,
too is
okay.
this is what I kind of put it together when I read that part of the so when they were saying that they wanted to get rid of
Hold on,
they
Kelly,
wanted
you're
to get
cutting
rid
out.
of human.
Hold on, hold on. Save your breath, man. You're cutting out. Kelly, hold on. You sound like a robot, man. Say, yeah,
Sorry
okay.
about that. It could be the connection where I live at, but yeah.
No, it's
But
okay.
anyway, what they were talking about is that they wanted to get rid of this, right? But not only humans, but they also wanted to get the half breed.
I cut
Okay.
out again.
Yeah, you're cutting out. You completely cut out. So let's Kelly's in timeout for a minute. Okay. Anything to add to that, Todd or Frank?
Just basically what he was saying. That they wanted to get rid of Enlil wanted to get rid of the half breeds, which was human and Anunnaki. But
Okay,
but like
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the wars that caused the poison wind was Enlil and Marduk fighting each other.
Well, and that's the story that can and all the fallen angels stuff. And it was crazy if you look at it in the book.
Okay, same thing. Hey, Kelly, same thing.
The story
Kelly, I'm muting you. Hey, see if you can restart Discord and come back because it's literally unlistenable. I can't really understand what you're saying. Just close Discord and then come back in. See if that fixes it. Go ahead, Frank. Sorry, technical issues again.
Yeah, it's always a difficulty. A good conversation so far, though. So, what I'm really curious about, and maybe Todd, you can address this, is what happens, right? So, they've kind of preserved humans after these floods. They're fighting. What happens to Enlil? What happens to Enki? How does the story end?
Okay, well, basically, after the flood and after the wars and everything, Marduk and Enki are in Egypt, and Enki becomes Ptah, the biggest god in Egypt, and Marduk becomes Amun Ra. Well, first he was Ra, and then he became Amun Ra, which means the unseen Ra, because he left uh, Egypt to go back to Babylon because he wanted to take over Babylon from Enlil again. But he ended up not being able to do that, so he went back to Egypt.
Okay, so they're tooling around, setting up different civilizations. What ultimately happens to Enlil, the guy who wants us all dead? Do we ever find out?
I honestly don't know what happened to Enlil. They never really too clear on what happens to Enlil. I think he might have went back or he might have stayed, but they also they do their leadership in succession with the zodiac. The time that Enlil was ruling everything, it was the time of the bull, Taurus, in the zodiac. And when Marduk started taking over, when he tried to take over first, it wasn't his time because his time was the year of the ram or the zodiac time of the ram. and it wasn't his time to rule yet. So that's why he failed that time, and that's what his father told him why he failed. And then when it became in the zodiac, the age of the ram, Marduk took over, and he's still his like faction is still supposedly in charge until we move into Aquarius. And I don't know who takes over in Aquarius. But when we hit Aquarius, it's supposed to be a new golden age. We're supposed to rise back up to the times like that we were in of intelligence and spirituality like it was in Atlantis.
Okay, interesting. Maybe you can unmute Kelly and see if his connection's.
Yep, you got it. Let's see. Let's unmute Kelly. Unmute. Kelly, try it, man.
Hello.
Yeah, keep talking.
Hello.
Say sends or something.
Hello.
Yeah,
So
no.
cutting
Yeah,
out.
yeah. See if you can reset your device or whatever you're on, because you're cutting in and out. See if you can reset that. I can sympathize. I also have terrible.
Yeah, if you're on your phone, or whatever, just restart the phone and then come right back.
Okay, so we'll wait for him to come back, but we ultimately don't know what happens to these guys. So they could still be here on Earth. They could have gone back to Nibiru. Nibiru could be coming back around for another swing. What did Sitchin say? It was like 2600 is when it's expected back. Do you know the number?
Every 3,600 years.
No, but he specifically mentioned a day. I thought that this thing was, or a year, it was coming back in relation to our own time. I think it was like the year 2600 around.
I don't know anything about that. I never heard that.
Okay. Yeah. So ultimately, we don't know what happened to them. Is that right? It's kind of up in the air at that point.
Well, we know they were still here because of the Greek gods, the Indian gods, the Roman gods. It's all them. It's the same pantheon. So they were here for a good while into our history, and then they just disappeared into the background.
So you're telling me the Pope is an Anunnaki?
I'm not saying that, but the Vatican has, I guarantee you, they have most of the secrets left by the Anunnaki. They hoard everything.
Okay, I think that's what Kelly was kind of alluding to as well. Is they're still there? They're still in the background. They're still kind of controlling things, just like they did in the past with their priests. They would prop up to power. They're still kind of there. What do you think about that? Do you think they're sheltered somewhere, or do you think they're out doing politics?
I'm pretty sure they're behind the scenes in everything. Politics, corporations. That's why the governments don't care about people. That's why they kill children in different countries, because they don't give a shit about us.
But do the people running those countries not give a shit, or do the Anunnaki overlords give them that directive not to give a shit?
Well, the Anunnakis are the ones pulling the strings, so the puppets that follow their rules or their orders, those are the people higher up in charge, running shit.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking about. That is, when you read through some of this stuff, like the wrestling and the way, the biting of the genitals and some of the raping, like that one person Enlil raped, later forced her, I can't remember her name, Sud or something. They forced her to marry him after she got raped, right? So these don't seem like, some of them anyway.
Well, they didn't force her. They asked her if she would marry him, and she said yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So some of them seem benevolent, but some of them seem a little bit not so much. Is that right? Like some of them are really bad people.
Right. Well, it's the two different factions. Enlil and Enki. Enkis are the ones that care about humans because they're the ones that created us, and Enlil's the side that doesn't care, that wants war and strife and power.
Sounds like a sadistic
Okay.
bunch of aliens. So Frank, do you have any new insight on how we're going to take these guys on when they come back?
Well, I was digging around. Yeah, we can talk about that in a minute. Let's see if Kelly reconnects. I was digging around, and apparently I put this link in the main folder. Maybe you can share it out. There's this Pentagon Insider. I don't know if you've seen this, Todd, but we can play it now. that claims the Anunnaki will come back to Earth. So let's play this clip. I don't know if it's true or not, but let's see what this guy has to say. He is actually an ex-intelligence agent.
That's what they all say, though, right? We could probably say that, get away with
Pretty
it,
much.
right? Because you can't really actually verify that. Anyway, I'm just saying. I'm not making fun of you, Frank. Okay, here we go. So, proof of the Anunnaki return. We're going to play this. Here's the link if you guys want to check it out. It will be in chat, and here we go. Action.
A number of things that I've heard from people in the Pentagon, that the buzzword in the secret of secrets in the Pentagon is the Sumerian gods are returning, and that's what they're referring to as that whole area. That Peter's
Wow. Can you repeat that again, just in case anybody missed it?
Well,
yeah, you're good. You're good. Let me finish this clip real quick. I know you guys can't hear it. It's just 20 more seconds.
Buzzword
in the Pentagon, in the the military circles that are in the know about the cover up here, they kind of in whispered tones talk about the return of the Sumerian gods, and they're talking about the what we would call aliens or fallen angels returning into the Middle East, into Old Sumer area.
The Anunnaki.
Well, could be
under the other ancient names.
Do you think that has anything to do with why we're in Iraq?
Okay, I'll recap that real quick. So there's this former intelligent agent. He's saying that there's whispers in the Pentagon, and they actually consider the return of the ancient Sumerian gods, and they mention them by name, the Anunnaki there. So there we go. That's what they were talking about. Quick clip, and that's pretty interesting that somebody's taking it seriously, at least according to this guy, right?
That's probably because of all the stuff that they found when they invaded Iraq.
No, they took all that.
Yeah, they invaded and took it.
There you go.
Okay, so
right? Go ahead.
let's skip back a bit because Kelly was disconnected. I was asking Todd, what ultimately happened to all these people? Do you think they stayed? Do you think some of them left? Do you think some of them are still here behind the scenes pulling the strings? Like, what's the ultimate fate of these Anunnaki back on Nibiru? What do you think?
My opinion is that I would say some of them went back because when they found out, going back to that one emissary you're talking about, a different species. Well, he ended up being a different species, I believe, because when his dad showed back up, their dad, Anu, they were talking about, you sent Galzu, and his dad was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't send anybody. And they were like, during the Great Flood, and then he's saying that the humans they're supposed to live. So then they claim that as to be that the great creator of everything, I guess, wanted the humans to survive. But to your point where they went, maybe some of them went back. Maybe there's still some of them here to rule because, their rotation of the around 3,000, 33,600 years is their rotation of their planet, supposedly to come around. But yeah, I think somebody's in behind the scene, and I don't know if it's Anunnaki because other books state otherwise, and I could bring that up a little bit later. But yeah, because their lifespans, they're I don't know how long they are anymore, but back then if you go to the Sumerian list, and they're in there, they have like rules that rule for 200,000 years.
You're going full robot again, Kelly. You're going full robot. All right. Let's sorry to cut you off. You're again indecipherable. If you're speaking in code, we need the actual code to decipher. Okay. Try again real quick. Oh, nothing. He's yeah. Okay. You're again muting you. Okay. It's back to the same. Okay. So what do you think, Greg? So we've talked about the Anunnaki several times. They talk about them all the time on Ancient Aliens. It's a recurring theme because the story does kind of have its tentacles in everything, right? In the religions, like we said, in pop culture a little bit, like Timothy keeps saying, it's in the zeitgeist. It's there. It's part of human history, whether we want to talk about it or not, whether we want to admit it or not. How much you believe is true or not is up to you, of course, as with everything we talk about. But what do you think, Frank? Let's assume, let's live in the world for a minute where the Anunnaki are real, and they disappeared. What do you think happened? Do you think they are still here, pulling strings from the shadows? Or do you think that's a little bit outlandish at this point? What do you think?
What are you asking?
Yeah,
Frank?
Yeah, so it's hard to know specifically. The one thing I would suggest is, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Todd, they never really wanted to go to Earth for the sake of colonizing a new planet.
Right.
The ultimate goal was always to go back to Nibiru, fix everything up, and live a happy life there. It doesn't seem like they're expansionist. You know what I mean? It seems like we got to fix that planet, and then that's it. So, based on that, I would say they went back. That's my thoughts, and they may come back here again one day. But I think they all kind of returned based on that little.
Okay, fair enough. And then, so Todd, you said you think they're still here, pulling the strings.
Some of them are, yeah.
Okay. I think I'm with Frank. Or at least if they're here, they're maybe on the moon, maybe on Mars, or maybe somewhere close, but not exactly here. I'm not convinced they're here. I mean, I'd have to see some evidence that is groundbreaking, right? But I mean, for me, again, like I said, this is a kind of a cursory story. Well, Frank and I haven't been deep into it. Frank has more than I have, but based on what I see with my own eyes and the things I hear and the things people talk about, I would have to agree that I think they're gone. At least in some respect, maybe close, but definitely not here on Earth. That's my uneducated opinion. There you go. What do you guys think? It's up to you. What do you think it is? And yeah, there we go. So we'll try Kelly in a sec. Go ahead, Frank.
That's another interesting point. Is they supposedly found all these giant skeletons all over the place, right? In Iraq, in the Grand Canyon, all these giant skeletons. Do you think they were the hybrids? Do you think they were the Anunnaki themselves? What do you think about those skeletons that the Smithsonian apparently covered up?
I think it's both. And there's newspaper clippings going back to the 1700s, 1600s of giant skeletons being found.
Okay, so you think it was actually these Anunnaki here, or the hybrid Anunnaki humans, and they covered it up. They kind of suppressed the evidence so people wouldn't know that they might still be here.
Yeah, because it would ruin the narrative of evolution.
Fair enough. I think that's probably true. Like, it wouldn't surprise me even a little bit if there was a larger conspiracy to maybe hide these things, because science is thin-skinned a little bit, and they don't like being questioned on their official narratives. So I could buy that this is maybe these biblical skeletons that we talked about, and the ones that they said were in the Grand Canyon, hidden by the Smithsonian in this bit. It wouldn't surprise me if that was true, and they moved on to they did hide these things for many reasons. Maybe this was part of the cabal, right? Maybe this was part of the people that are supposed to hide these things, right? They're kind of in on the knowledge, and when something pops up like this, they have to kind of ferret it away and say nothing to see here. It's all a rumor, right? It never happened. That kind of makes sense to me.
Pretty much.
Okay, let's talk about proof of all this. So actually, let's take a step back. They mentioned in the Book of Enki the place of the ships, or the place all the their ships were kept. Is there some place they had to relocate them after the catastrophe? But there was a place where they put all these ships. What was that about?
The landing place. It's basically where they would take off and come back. But there was also another place that supposedly Enlil had built, which supposedly is a Stargate, where they I forget what it was called. I don't remember what it was called, but supposedly it was a Stargate where they would just come directly from Nibiru through that gate to Earth and back and forth. But that was just the people, not the gold.
Okay, now I think Kelly was mentioning a long time ago. It's too bad his connection isn't working. About stuff under the Sphinx, right? How does that relate to the Anunnaki? Like, apparently there was a ship under the Sphinx, or something buried there, technology.
That was Ningazita, aka Thoth, who was Enki's second son, and he's the one that built the pyramids and built the Sphinx. And supposedly, when in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, he talks about putting his ship, a light ship, under the paw of the Sphinx, and they found chambers under the paw of the Sphinx, but they won't show us what's there down there. But that's supposedly where he hid the Hall of Records and this ship. That supposedly, sometime in the future, from back then, another race or something's gonna come and we'll be able to use the ship to fight off this other race.
Okay, let's try Kelly and see if we can get him to chime in. See if he's still working. Kelly, you there? Can you hear us, buddy?
Yeah, how about now? Am I better?
Perfect. Did you catch what Frank was saying about the Sphinx and all that? Okay, so what's your take on that? You heard what Todd said. Go ahead.
First thing, going back to where he was saying about proof and celestial ships that they stored. At one time, Belbek, Lebanon is actually was known then and is same name now as, and the literal meaning is the landing place. So that's where they would come in. And right now, after Roman, well, not now, but back then when Roman took over Rome and all that, Greece, they put the Pantheon on top of that. That's where you see, but those blocks, they even talk about that. The Gigis are actually the ones who did that. Those are the giants that mixed breed, I believe, because they mixed with. That's what they wanted to get rid of. That's what I was talking about earlier, is that they wanted to get rid of that also with humans. You know what I mean? It didn't really matter because it's true. And Lil was here. He in his mindset, we were only supposed to come here and mine gold and then bounce. But Enki was the creator. He's the one who created all this, but he didn't want us to die. He didn't want us to perish. So that's why. And that Galzu guy, he came and was told Enki to do that, to build this submarine type thing, this ark. That everybody thinks it was a boat, but it was a submersible. And he, take all the DNA of all the animals and human species that they have, and then survive. But that's where we are now. But
Okay, let's talk about proof. Like, we have all this knowledge. Let's say Trump kicks out Pence, and the both of you are now the VPs when he wins in 2020. What do you do to prove this? Where do you go? Where do you look? We know we have astronomers saying there is definitely other planets out there, other huge planets out there. So that's a little bit of proof. X on Earth, like, what do you do? Where do you power? Where on Earth do you go to kind of prove this? To kind of look for these artifacts or look for these relics? What would you do?
I'd go to Antarctica. I'd go to the Vatican. I'd go to all the ancient megalithic sites that have already been uncovered, and I'd dig deeper.
that's one start to go to, would be ancient start. I mean, if you go, it's nice to read about all these places, but to actually physically go there and see it yourself, now that would be amazing, because then you could touch the stones that could still cut your finger, over in Punapunku. You can go over to Egypt and see the massive, how that thing is an 8-sided pyramid instead of a 4-sided, that and the smallest one. The middle one's the only one that's the 4-sided one. You know what I mean? Go down like the Vatican, if you could get into those archives and see all that, because they're hiding all that. That's just like what Todd was saying. They first, it was first, their kingship, and then they, gave it all, that these guys were, these leaders of these religions. They were like the go in between, give us the laws, or, what they wanted done. So yeah, it's still the same. But if they came here, I don't know, it'd be hard to deal with, I guess, because they would believe that they're still rulers of everything and anything that was created here. Now,
Okay.
proof too. I would say proof. Yeah, you like I saying, Belbek, Lebanon was the names. You got to go through history, because if you go through history, then you're gonna go through of like family lineage, and then from family lineages, you can just see where they at, where they spread amongst each other. Antarctica, like I said, would be one place to start as well. Just like Todd was saying, I mean, they're still there. There's a planet. I mean, there's a place here on this, could be even Middle Earth, a thing of Middle Earth, where they could get into. Who knows? because no one's allowed to go down there except for some governments.
Yeah, so I think you're right. Is we have to either to prove it or disprove it, we've got to go to these ancient megalithic sites and we've got to actually dig into them. You know, maybe go under the Sphinx, go under the pyramids, start actually investigating these things instead of kind of sitting back twiddling our thumbs. And that would be one way to get the evidence, is to actually go and actually look. Again, surprisingly reluctant of Egypt and all these other places to actually investigate these sites. Now, what about these way stations they set up? Do you think we could find them? Do you think we could look for them on Mars?
Yeah, I'd say they're still there. I mean, at least some remnants of it, and just like any kind of building, you know, a lot of people they say they see a lot of different stuff, similarities that were, you know, through those rovers. Uh, I mean, there's like supposedly satellite pictures of what they call looks like a city with, I mean, some kind of buildings and stuff out there. I mean, unless you have a telescope, if you have that much money, kind of like Bigelow, you know what I mean, the billionaire. If you have that type of money, you would know. I mean, physically seeing it with your own eyes, maybe even communicating with these type of species or different species that are here on the planet visiting, because I'm pretty sure they weren't the only ones.
Okay, what about the moon? Was there any reference to building on our moon? Any structures or any mining attempts? Anything up on the moon?
Well, there was a one part they were saying that Inky and Enlil went to the moon to see if they could do anything there, and they said it was inhabitable. But they spent a lot of time there within the book, you know, in the book of Inky. They spent a few years there actually. So what was kind of weird is maybe they, you know, they're saying that it was inhabitable, that there was nothing there, but maybe there is something there. You know what I mean? With all these stuff that they were saying that they, you know, hit a satellite on it and it rang like a bell for 3 hours afterwards, or sometimes something like that. You know,
Just want to jump in real quick. It was Enki and Marduk that went to the moon, not
yeah,
Enki.
that's right, Inky and Marduk. Yep.
Okay, so the proof is out there. If we look for it, if we actually start digging, actually start exploring the moon and Mars, we might be able to find something. I think that's what we're saying.
Oh yeah.
So, okay, so let me ask then: is we've all looked at pictures of Mars and the moon and seen some anomalous stuff, right? So, do you think some of the things that we're seeing from the rovers, if you believe all that's real, do you think some of those photographs are maybe leftover decimated way stations from the Anunnaki? Do you think we've seen parts of that, or like Kelly said previously, maybe the Cydonia region of Mars and places like this? Do you think it's actually there for us to find?
Absolutely.
Okay, so some of that stuff is definitely maybe Anunnaki or whatever their descendants are from there on Mars. That's crazy stuff. So okay, so just brief us on Mars real quick, just to maybe segue us into that. We may go next here, but if there's leftover ruins on Mars that are like literally decimated, destroyed, you can't see any like actual buildings. It's like there was some sort of war, right? Was there some sort of nuclear war that happened there on Mars itself?
Yeah, remember that time we did the show when I think Frank was missing that time, and we brought up that map where they were supposed to send in the second rover or the second one, instead of moving away and maybe going to Cydonia and checking out the face and the pyramids. Remember, and they keep landing in an area where they found that chemical that was only produced by a nuclear weapon. I can't remember what it was. I think, and then Frank, you jumped in the following show and we were talking about that.
Yeah, it was a particular isotope. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Okay, so that what I'm asking though is that in the story of the Anunnaki, where there was some sort of actual nuclear war there? Is that
Well,
part of it?
there was even here on this planet, they were talking about there was like the 7 major cities that they used the weapons of terror on. So, yeah, I mean, and if you look in some of those areas where like in India, or if you look over in Mexico, South America, Peru, you know who does that actually was the guy who talks about the elongated skulls. I can't remember his name right now, but he he actually goes to a lot of those sites too, and I follow him on Facebook. But he's got Like there's this one wall in Peru, and then this one statue in Mexico where it looks like a burn mark, like a laser or something, burn right through it, and uh, it was so hot that it turned it to glass, just like anything that has that type of heat, like could turn sand into glass. So
Okay,
yeah,
so
there's actually there's proof like that. You know what I mean? That's out there. Uh, there's bombs that or like areas like that. It was another one is in Turkey where they have like half the buildings that they were building little huts right out of these little mountain sides, but that's all burned up too.
yeah, I did see that. I think it's the Indian pantheon talked about way back. There was some sort of nuclear warrior on Earth. So yeah, just curious if the Anunnaki actually talked about it. Okay, anything there, Frank, about blowing shit up?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of it. Now, Emin in the Discord asked about bloodlines. Do you think there are people out there, like hybrids, I would suppose, or maybe they're trying to preserve their bloodlines, preserve their Anunnaki percentages, and kind of breed with each other? Is that what we're seeing? And also, if you can comment on the symbology, like all this occult symbology, does that play into this at all? Like, are they trying to, is there a group of people out there trying to preserve the past, keep the religion alive, so to speak?
Yeah, they do. They were doing that even before they got here. So like, uh, when they marry, like say, who was it in Lil? I think it was. He married his half sister, and Inky actually, both of them had kids from their. They had a they had sex with their half sister, and they had kids and stuff. And that was another issue that I was kind of wanted to talk to you about as well, is like that type of lineage. I mean, if you talk about how science says now that you can pass down like traces on your DNA to your kids, like if you're traumatized or something, you know what I mean? That was still tracer markers onto you can pass on to your that onto the DNA to your children. Now, if that's the case, look at the type of people or species that these people were. I mean, they married their half sister, so they kept all that stuff, like the king shit, like the old kings back in like in the early 12th century. They just married their mother or their brother and sister, half sister, cousins, that type stuff. Anything they were warlike, and why would we be warlike? We didn't know anything about that if they were using that type of little creature to create what they did create, which is human now.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, what you mentioned, that's actually so, for example, if your mother or your grandmother was starving during her pregnancy, you'll actually see signs of that in the daughter and then in the grandchild. So it's interesting how that's kind of a new science, this epigenetic analysis. But yeah, it seems like that's something I noticed is they were always breeding within the family, trying to preserve a bloodline of some sort. Do we have an estimate on how many of them there were in total? Like how many people lived on the planet Nibiru?
I have no idea.
No, go ahead, Todd.
I was just gonna say I have no idea, but their planet twice the size of Earth, so I'm pretty sure there's of them than there is of.
They actually got well. They killed themselves a lot with a lot of wars and stuff. So they almost like annihilated themselves as well.
That's interesting. Yeah, maybe our warlike tendencies, especially of the people in power, if they're preserving that Anunnaki aggression in the bloodlines by breeding with only other Anunnaki type people, if they're preserving that kind of anger that they gifted to us, I suppose you would say, maybe that explains a lot.
Yeah, in the book they were warring with each other, right? So they were killing each other off. So what they were trying to do after that was that's how they made factions of humans like that. So they got us to fight their battles with them. So like it was wars between the two brothers. You know what I mean? The Enki and little brother sons and stuff. So when they were warring, they got us to like follow them, just like how. That's what I'm saying. When they broke up their civilizations, just like now, just like how Muslims are fighting Christians, or that's been going on for centuries as well, or even like when the Persians took over, or when the Mongols took over. You know what I mean? That those type things was when they were having us fight their wars with them.
Okay, so I think that in general, that kind of covers the whole book of Enki, right? Is there anything else we missed? Anything important? Any other, interesting details or anything you care to?
Well, go ahead, Todd, if you want to go first.
Well, I'm actually typing something, so
Okay. Yeah, I would, and nothing really more to add. I mean, you would have to read the book, just like as we were saying in the beginning. It's very interesting read, but it's not only just a read; it's actually history, and by these ancient tablets that they found over in Iraq. So uh, to say that it's and then all of that's just passed down again through like different type of religions, and so how can we say that it was it's not real? I mean, we just don't. Most people won't believe it until they really see it with their own eyes, and so I mean, most people we can't really say it was until something does happen like that.
Yeah, again, I want to kind of stress that is I was reading it, I was kind of dozing off a bit, and then I got to the part where they're biting each other's genitals off, and I was like, okay, this is getting interesting now. And yeah, it's really crazy the parallels you can draw between what was on these the stories we tell today, and also how, and this is the key detail that got me, how different they are and how different they act compared to the way we act. Humans always want to write stories about Bambi acting like a human, about, whatever that rabbit is in that movie about it acting like a human. But these Anunnaki, they seem to act wildly different than us humans did.
Yeah, just another thing too is just like I think they're just trying to. I mean, that's another like their rule. They rule with an iron fist somewhat. And I mean, they're trying to keep us down because if we're them, like I said, we got that much DNA from them. We're not even supposed to be. We're not. Just like Josh, the guy who was talking about that does the readings. He was saying we're not even. We're Anunnaki too, so we're not even. That's why we don't feel like we should be kings too. That's why the whole we shouldn't feel like that we should be a type of slave either. You know what I mean? So it's not. We're them. So yeah, they want something from us as well, but they if they're here, I don't know. It's kind of that's a hard answer to come up with for me.
Yeah, definitely. And if they come back, it's not going to be a good thing. It's definitely not going to be a good thing. Now, again, Emin asked to put another question in the Discord here. So they created us, and we kind of addressed this in the last show a little bit, but did someone create them? Or did they evolve on the planet Nibiru? Or did they emigrate from somewhere else and settle in Nibiru? Do we know the origin of the Anunnaki themselves?
No, it never says. They never. They talk about like when they first created us. When they were taught, they had like a conversation about that, and they were saying, well, maybe we were like them too. It never does say where they came from or where they went or if they went. So I mean, that's another question. I mean, most people doesn't want to believe. See, that's the question of saying who created us. People want to say it was a god of some sort. So, but they don't want to talk about like say we say that if the ancient astronaut theories that we were up upgraded by another alien species, but who created them? So it could be like millions and millions of years old throughout galaxies and galaxies of somebody going throughout the universes and creating life or doing like here's this planet we want to replicate it or help it so and it produces this type of creature what I mean carbon base, but who says that all life comes from carbon anyway? It could be other that stuff could be anywhere else.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big fallacies of science here is we want to frame everything through the Earth lens, and we're so minuscule and tiny in the universe that calling everything carbon based, and that's the necessity of life is I think absurd. But yeah, we'll see. Time will tell. Time will prove us right because God bless science and all the good things it does. But holy shit, come on, come
Well,
on.
you ever heard of the guy called Valiant Thor?
Yeah, definitely the alien.
Yeah, he was staying at the Pentagon. He said he was from Venus and that he had 6 finger appendages too. He had 6 fingers on each hand. And the story is that they're silicon based. They're not carbon based because of their the the planet Venus. So that's what's kind of interesting too. There's even a thing coming out now that I don't know how real it is, but they're saying that Tesla was from Venus.
Wait, Tesla what?
Yeah, Tesla. That he was sent here
Nikola
from
Tesla.
Venus.
I got you. Okay. I was like, wait, are we trying to say Elon Musk Tesla?
I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying I ran across something that claiming that now. I
Oh,
don't know
I
if
see.
it's true or not. Probably not, but who knows? You never know.
Got it. Okay. Perfect. We're kind of near the end here. We got a few minutes left.
Anybody
anything
got
else
any
here, Frank?
questions?
Yeah. I mean, there's tons of good questions in the chat. If anybody wants to hop on Discord and ask some questions here, we got Kelly and Todd on. We got a few more minutes, so if you want to do that, go to troubledminds.org, the official website, click the Discord link, and you can just get on here and ask a question. If you want to do it old school, they can hear you on the telephone, so just call in, ask the question, and we'll take you offline. So if you want to do that, 702-957-1037. We didn't really spam the number this show because we knew we'd be back with lots of stuff, so there's a number. If you guys have questions or you have to get answered about this, we got a couple experts here really into this. You can tell the depth of their knowledge and how much of the stuff they've read. So, and remember, one source is not the only source. They've kind of poked around and looked at not just the Sitchin stuff, but what everybody else says about it as well. So, definitely good and definitely worthwhile. And I'm glad we did this. But there we go. So as we wait for that, anything else? Any other thoughts, Frank? Or go ahead, Frank. I don't know if you're.
Yeah, why don't you pull some questions out of the chat there? I've kind of asked everything I think, but what do the people have? Because we got these two experts on. Let's get some questions going.
Okay, go ahead and fire them off in the chat, and we'll read the questions as well, guys. So a few ways to do it. Give us a call, 702-957-1037, watching the phone lines. If you want to get on Discord, troubleminds.org, or just type in the chat, and we'll ask your question and address that here.
Oh,
Yeah.
there's one thing I did want to say about like different species. Like I said, there was one time when they were, and there's throughout the story they were talking about these different when they were trying to, mine this gold. They were finding these other tunnels throughout Earth, underground, and they were asking, well, they even asked like Inky and Lil or the leader of the digging that they gave. They're like, hey, what should we do about it? And they're like, well, what is it? And they were, I guess they took him down there to show them like, hey, there's someone else here. It looks like, but they just said, just keep going, destroy, just keep going because they were still looking for gold because that's what their reason why we're there. And this other site that I seen, we were talking about Zecharia extinction. Another guy was talking about some more tablets that they found in that library in Nineveh was when they, when they made the boat and they came out, right, and they landed in the high mountains of Peru, and they landed in Lake Titicaca, right, and that's when they came out. And the people that were there that survived, they were noticing that there was like a reptilian race. They call them lizard-faced. These lizard-faced people, they were helping them. And what's crazy is if you we talked about that before. I have talked about on this show before about the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, and they talk about these creatures that move along the shadows. They were how's it go? It's something like they killed the leaders of men and took over their place and ruled over men. It's I think in that one's in like tablet 7 or 8 in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth.
That's crazy. So they came here, they started digging, but they found tunnels, kind of suggesting that someone else had been here already. I didn't catch that detail. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's just a quick part of it. They were asking them, well, what do we should do about this? And they're like, just keep going because they were, and it's weird is that they found diamond or when De Beer Diamond Company, they were, down in Africa digging for diamonds. They kept finding ancient gold mines. And they were like, well, what should we do about that? And even De Beer, they did the exact same thing. Well, just destroy it. We're here looking for diamonds. We're not looking for gold. But that's another proof to Anunnaki of things that they were saying that they are ancient gold mines. And that's actually, you can look that one up. It's they found them in South Africa. These gold mines, and they're like shaped round. You know, they got little round walls around it. If you had an aerial view of it, and they're like look like circles within circles. And they claim that those things are a few million years old.
That actually makes me think of another couple of questions. You know, when you read back in some of the historical documents, they tell you like we had to ship 20 barrels of tobacco here. Did they ever say how much gold they took? And is there ever an implication that they'll need more gold in the future?
It doesn't really say specifically how much they took, but they took tons. I mean, it was rocket ships after rocket ships leaving here, even now. And you know, there was one scientist that I was reading about. He was even had a talk about it, and he was saying that the planet, it's not just the planet. They have this one gold mine that they've been pulling gold out for decades now, and he was like, "How is that?" You know what I mean? Usually you think once they hit a vein, they would, be end of it and they have to go look for more, but they're just keep pulling gold out of here. So he was wondering if the planet Earth is just constantly creating gold. So maybe that's why they're still here. And it doesn't really say how much. There's some stuff that just like, it doesn't really go into major detail of how much, like that. For example, they didn't say how much gold they took or how much more they're going to need, or even if the planet died. Who knows if that even happened? But if they got the gold they need, then they're still around. We'll find out, because I did calculations through what they call a shar, which is, I think, maybe one. They say a lot of people would say it was one rotation of their planet around Earth, which is, say, Zecharia Stinchin's number of 3,600 years, right, or 3,000 years. So if you take that and you take that from what we would call an age, which is 2,150 years, right? And then called the Great Year, which is about 26,000 years, right? And I can't remember exactly how I did it. It came with, but what I got was either they're on top of us, that planet is going to be close on top of us, or it's about 500 years away.
Yeah, that's interesting to think they lost their atmosphere the first time because they came too close to Jupiter, I believe. And what if it happens again? What if they need to come back and get more gold to fix the problem once again? So, yeah, it could be a big problem if they have to come back and this whole cycle starts all over again.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll be a little bit more readier this time.
Right on. Hey, got a couple questions here. Elizabeth on YouTube says, I got a question for Frank Pierce. Mr. Pierce, are we continuing the FBI files? You're a great reader of these documents. Would like to learn more.
Again, we don't have any classified FBI files. If you're a spy, it's all in public domain. But there's a ton of them, isn't there? There's like the Hitler ones. There's the UFO ones. There's you'd have to specify which ones, because it's always a great pleasure going to the official FBI website and reading the officially released FBI documents.
Actually, yeah. So Elizabeth, that's actually where we got those. Literally just off the FBI website. So there was no secret anything about that. But yeah, we could definitely cut some of those up and do another section, because there's a ton of crazy stuff in there. If you recall, guys, last time we talked about the FBI files, they were talking about interdimensional aliens and FBI actual documents. So there's that. There's that. Okay, so hold on, another one here. Let's see. That was a good question I missed. Where is it? Scrolling up. Russ wants to know, was JFK killed because he wants us to go into space? I have no idea. Somebody want to take that one?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question in general. Do you think if the Anunnaki are still here, or if their agents are still here in control, that they are preventing us from going into space because they don't want us up there with them? That seems like an Enlil kind of strategy.
Well, I don't think they're even in control anymore, per se. Because if you even go through like the ancient books, they have like the War of Yahweh, the Wars of Yahweh, or whatever. Some of that stuff, or even like the Mahabharata, with the two warring factions of God, they might not even be. You know what I mean, like I said, if you go even by the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, those reptilian shapeshifters that could, you know what I mean? If they could infiltrate us, I'm pretty sure they infiltrated them, because they were and the Emerald Tablets, they were talked about. They were in in the ancient Atlantis. So they were creeping and crawling around somewhere, but they could capture them and send them back to where they were at least one time. Maybe it could be a different dimension or whatnot.
Okay. Fair enough.
Me personally, I think JFK was killed because he was going to expose the banks.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah, the Federal Reserve and that whole bit.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. So not Anunnaki related, if you're asking us.
I don't think so.
Okay. Oh, fair enough. All right. So we're at the end of this. So, do you guys have like social media you want to tell anybody about so that if they want to find you, I think it's only right that they should be able to contact you and ask you questions. You guys are experts in this, as far as I'm concerned. And go ahead and plug it, and then we'll end this out. Go ahead and start with Kelly.
No, I used to have one. I'm gonna actually. Me and the wife were talking about having me start a new one. If I do, I'll I don't know if you guys mind if I can link it towards you guys to have some people come to my page and ask me questions, because that's what my show called at one time was always questions. So right now, if they want, they can hit me up on Facebook on message if they got any questions. I had a few people. I hit a bunch of different sites and blogs, and I had other people that are not my friends or anything, like, per se as me accepting them, but they had asked questions or wanted other links, and I've hooked them up. So if you want, you can just hit me up on Facebook until I can get my other page going.
There you go. Yeah, Kelly is also on our Discord as well, and Todd. You can reach both of them there. So just to plug that, go to troubleminds.org. And they're both active there, so they do drop links and pop in from time to time and say good stuff. Okay, so if you do get your stuff going, Kelly, definitely let us know. We'll throw it up for you. Appreciate that. All right. How about you, Todd?
Facebook or Discord, basically.
Okay, so probably Discord the best way to reach you.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. Troubleminds.org. Discord link on the top right. You can find both of these guys there. And then if they have blogs or web pages or whatever that come out, we'll definitely link them in there and let you guys know as they happen. So there we go. We're at the end of this. We appreciate you guys doing this because, as you're aware, the information is so deep when you go into this that, like I said, it's dozens and dozens of hours. And if you kind of take it as hey, I'm going to learn about this and do a show, you go back and listen to our first show. It was a train wreck, I think, in my humble opinion. So having you guys on to do it this way is so much better because Frank did a great job. Thank you, Frank, for picking the brains and asking the questions and leading us down the road. So, anything to end this out, Frank?
Yeah, ultimately, I think with everything else, we just have to start getting answers to these questions. So all these ancient monolithic sites, let's dig them up, not destroy them, but actually go under them. They're finding these new sites every day, and people want to investigate, and they get repelled by the government. Oh, you can't do that. You can't do this. Let's get answers. And this applies to everything, doesn't it? It's all about transparency. So let's find out what's under the Sphinx. Let's find out what's under those pyramids. Let's actually go. Let's get answers to these questions that we want. And not only with this, but with Epstein as well. Let's start getting answers to our questions. And I think it'll make the world a better place.
There you go. That's what this is all about. It's about making the world a better place, one question at a time. So, again, if you guys want to help us out, if you like the show, troubleminds.org, that's the official website. Do all the things. We got our social media up there. It's YouTube, Facebook, all of them. Twitter. If you like it, we're there. So, the way to help us is to go follow, share, spread the conversation to people you know, and that's what this is about. That's what we do, and here we are at the end. You're listening to Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and I'm here with the magnificent Frank Pierce, Kelly and Todd. I'm not going to dox their last names, but you can find them on Discord, troubledminds.org, top right. There you go. There you go. Appreciate you guys hanging out, and we'll see you on
again, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, I just want to say one thing. If you guys, when everybody out there, research and research again. Don't read the books just once. Read them 200 or 300 times. That's how you guys are going to learn and pass the knowledge on.
There you go. That's how you do it. And so, again, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you all for listening. Thank you guys for contributing. And from all Troubled Minds to yours, we'll see you on Thursday night. Have a great night.